From WFIU in Bloomington, Indiana, I'm Kate Young, and this is Earth Eats.
Then we get into a question of, okay, based on life experience, based on the thoughts that have surfaced for everybody, what, if anything, are you wondering? What kind of questions come to mind?
On this week's show, we look back on a conversation with Laura Shepper and Kalie Dance about pairing food with art for socially distanced cultural events. We visit a teaching kitchen featuring Japanese food, and we talk with the chef and owner, Mori Willhite. And Alex Chambers brings us a brand new story about a chocolate cake recipe that some people are willing to share and some are not. That's all just ahead. Stay with us. Thanks for listening to Earth Eats. I'm Kate Young. We'll start with the story of a family recipe. Family recipes usually stay within the family. They may not be so delicious that people outside the family really want to make them. My colleague Alex Chambers says his family's cake recipe is different.
To prove the point, let's hear from someone outside my family. My brother's childhood best friend, Toby Davis. He encountered the cake before he met my brother.
When I was in elementary school, we used to go to the local premium ice cream shop. And very quickly, my family realized that what was even more delicious than the premium ice cream sold at the premium ice cream shop, don't tell them that I said this, was this one particular kind of cake. And the cake was a deep, rich, not too sweet, moist chocolate cake with the most perfect cream cheese icing you have ever had in your whole life. This is like the platonic ideal of cake.
Eventually, Toby's family decided getting pieces of the cake at the ice cream shop wasn't going to cut it. So they asked around and found the bakery that made them.
And started buying whole cakes for special occasions or, for any occasion that we could justify needing a whole cake.
Toby and my brother met in 5th grade. They became friends, hung out a lot, and eventually their conversation, as it does for so many of us, turned to cake.
That was when my family delightfully learned that your family were, in fact, the originators of this cake and the recipe.
If you'll excuse me for a minute, listener, I have a quick, sad message just for Toby. Toby, it's been over 3 decades since you learned that my family was the originator of this cake and the recipe. No one can blame you for thinking that. My dad has become associated with that recipe, probably more than anyone else. But here's the thing. It's no secret in my family that he didn't create the recipe himself. He stole it. At least, that's what I used to think. Granted, it would have been very out of character for him, but it added romance to the whole thing. This idea that he'd gotten tired of managing the ice cream shop. It was another ice cream shop, by the way, but they also made their own baked goods. In my imagination, he'd had to call the employees back from juggling on the sidewalk out front one too many times. And so one day he decided he'd had enough and went in the back and tore the recipe out of the binder where they were all stored. It made him a bit of a Robin Hood in my head, that he took this proprietary recipe and then shared it throughout the world. Or at least to everyone who wanted it, which is almost everyone who tries it. About a year ago, I went home and asked him how he got it. Turns out he asked permission. So much less exciting. But like Robin Hood, he does want to share the wealth. Because this cake is important. It's become important to a lot of different families. Toby's family, for example.
It was basically our go-to birthday cake, celebration cake.
So he meets my brother. A couple years go by, and Toby's family is about to spend the year in Germany.
And realized with some alarm that we were going to have to spend a year without cake.
So Toby's mother went to my dad. She said if we promise not to bake the cake in the U.S.,
would you possibly consider sharing the recipe with us?
And as you can guess, he did. Because he would have, even without those promises. Because, like me, he likes to share this recipe. And that's what the two of us are going to do for you right now. Or almost right now. I do want to introduce my dad, Rob Chambers. When I was little, he owned a lunch counter and a series of restaurants. That all culminated in a bakery, Celebration Bakery, where they used this recipe a lot. He left all that in the 90s, and he's had a consulting business since then. There's a ramen hood quality to that business too, but, it's kind of in the weeds. You'll just have to trust me on that, because it's time to pull out that recipe.
This dark chocolate cake recipe that's on an old piece of cardboard, sort of, and taped up and everything. This is our...
And is that the one you've been using since...
For a long, long, long time, as far back as I can remember.
Yeah.
It's hard to read, but I use it anyway. And given the way that I do recipes, it just has all the ingredients and no real directions.
Oh, right. So that's what I've got for you. All ingredients, no directions. Ready? Go.
2 eggs and a cup of oil.
Teaspoon of vanilla?
Yeah, literally over a teaspoon of vanilla. 2 cups of sugar, 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of cocoa, a little bit of salt.
Looks like about a teaspoon.
And probably a little less than a teaspoon. 2 teaspoons of baking soda. 2 cups of coffee.
It's the secret ingredient.
It is the secret ingredient.
Got it? No. What were you doing? Okay. We'll walk through it. It's mostly straightforward, but there are a few twists, so you'll want to pay attention. This time, geez. We'll also get into the real story of how my dad got the recipe almost 50 years ago and its effect on the world since then.
All right, so let's usually start with the eggs.
It's a good place to start. So find a bowl and put in
1 little eggy. So 2 eggs and a cup of oil.
any neutral oil is fine. I usually use canola.
Goes in together here. And I'm gonna start by whipping that up together a little bit. And I don't have to do too much yet because the next step is to put sugar in and then emulsify it. And it takes some sugar.
2 cups, I think.
Yep. Okay, and then a little bit of vanilla too goes in with that.
Oh, we need to get coffee going too, right?
Oh shoot, I forgot about the coffee. That always happens to me.
Quick note about the coffee. You might think I'm trying to get you to make a coffee chocolate cake, a mocha cake. It is 2 cups of coffee. We're not fooling around. But this is just a chocolate cake.
A deep, rich, not too sweet, moist chocolate cake.
While the coffee is essential, the cake doesn't taste especially coffee-y once it's baked. While the coffee brews, let's talk about how my dad got the recipe without having to steal it.
One of my early jobs was running Bart's ice cream store in Northampton, and all of our baked goods were homemade, and one of the recipes was this chocolate cake recipe.
There was an old department store on Main Street, big building. The people who took it over wanted to fill it with specialty retail shops, clothing, jewelry, flowers, toys. Thorne's Marketplace. It worked, and Northampton became a bit of a boutique shopping destination. In those early days, they realized they'd need food, too.
The manager called me and asked if Bart would want to do a cart there, a snack cart.
My dad said, I got this, I'll do it myself. He worked out with Bart to buy baked goods wholesale. He sold other things too. The cart turned into a permanent counter in the central artery, and while my dad sold it decades ago, you can still go to that counter in Thorne's and get a snack. But not this cake. Bart eventually decided to sell his ice cream shop, and when he did, my dad asked permission to take the recipe. So you had permission for the recipe. I never knew that.
Yeah, I did have permission for the recipe. I made sure to get permission.
Which was good because he kept selling it in various forms. At one point, he was selling prepackaged pieces of this cake to Harold's, the ice cream shop where Toby first encountered it, and some convenience stores.
Locally owned convenience type stores.
It was going well, and when you've got something good, well, here's the thing about my dad. He's always insisted on being his own boss, having his own businesses. I really admired that about him. But it also meant he was always on the lookout for the business idea that would finally take off. Because generally, they weren't making him a living. And it's not like he's irresponsible. He's a really hard worker. It's just hard to come up with the right thing. And at that point, in the 80s, selling this cake seemed like it might be it.
We went through thinking that was a great idea and had another period where we tried to do that on a larger scale and tried to get that into a lot of stores in the area. But it had such a short shelf life, it really didn't work well for us.
This is not a Twinkie or popcorn.
It was when Smart Food first came out. And there was this this woman who was our primary sort of sales and delivery person, came back one day with Smart Food and was like aghast that this bag of popcorn cost as much as our chocolate cake that we worked so hard to make.
It is harder than popcorn, but don't worry, it's not that hard. So let's get back to it. We've got 2 eggs, a cup of oil, a teaspoon of vanilla, and 2 cups of sugar in the bowl.
And now I'm going to just really beat the heck out of these and emulsify it so that the sugar essentially dissolves in the oil.
Then grab another bowl and add 2 cups of flour. All-purpose is good.
And a cup of cocoa.
That's cocoa powder, just to be clear.
And then we need a little bit of salt. I'm throwing salt in with the cocoa and the flour.
Looks like about a teaspoon.
And probably a little less than a teaspoon.
So, a scant teaspoon salt. You'll use baking soda too, but don't add that yet. You'll dissolve that in the secret ingredient, which is the coffee. So stir up those dry ingredients, and then it's time to combine the wet and the dry.
If I was making a cake or cookies in a normal recipe, I'd throw it together and mix it and just get them combined. And, so you're not working gluten too much. In this case, when we add the coffee, this becomes almost a runny recipe. And it's always shocking how runny it is. And you think, oh, this is never going to work. And then you pour it into the pan and bake it for half an hour, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So,
one of the recipes, one of the places I have it written down, I think, it says when you add the flour and the cocoa powder, will get dry. It's a warning that it's going to be really dry. Because it's hard. I mean, I also try not to mix it too much, but even just to get everything fully moistened, it's pretty dense.
yeah.
Then we add the coffee, and the note after that says, will get wet.
Yeah, right.
It's supposed to be that way.
It is supposed to be that way. And so what I try to do is, rather than try to mix it very much, in the beginning, I just add coffee a little bit at a time and thin it.
Huh. Amazing.
Okay, so now I've got the wet and the dry sort of mixed, and I'm adding a little bit of coffee to thin it a bit. And it just takes a little while to thin it out. Thinning. Okay, we're almost there. I'm going to put a little bit more in, and then I'm going to add the baking soda to the rest of the coffee. So 2 teaspoons of baking soda.
Did you catch that? Here's how it went. We added dry ingredients to the wet, but we didn't mix them all the way in. Instead, we started adding coffee and getting everything mixed together. When there was a little coffee left, like a quarter cup or so, we added the 2 teaspoons of baking soda to the coffee to dissolve it. Then we added that coffee to the now very soupy batter. And now it's ready to put in the oven. Wait, I forgot to tell you, preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Then you can pour it into your prepared pan.
In the prepared pan, I always put wax paper on the bottom to make it easier to get it out of the pan. I'm using a 9x13 pan, but also you can use 2 9x9 inch rounds if you can find them.
I think it's 9x9x9x9x9x9.
Right. And we're going to give it 30 minutes.
Check it a little before 30 minutes. I like to poke a toothpick into the middle and see if it comes out clean. My dad presses down on the middle to see if it springs back. Either way, once it's done, let it cool for a few minutes in the pan and then flip it onto a cooling rack. Presumably you were making the cream cheese icing while the cake was in the oven, but in case you forgot, we'll put that recipe on the Earth Eats website too.
So that's the cake.
That might be the cake, but that's not the cake's effects. Let's hear a couple more testimonials before we go. First, Toby Davis.
When your family decided to stop running a bakery and the cake stopped being commercially available, we continued to make it for family holidays. And this cake has gone through many different iterations, some more successful than others. A less successful version, I recall, was made with whole wheat flour because my mother was trying to make it healthier. That was not as delicious. There were also the many years of fighting over whether or not the frosting was right. I believe the argument was always how much salt should we put into the frosting, because it never tasted quite the same as it did when your dad made it. And finally we discovered that my mother was so firmly committed to unsalted butter in everything she did that she was using unsalted butter in a salted butter recipe and then trying to make up the salt. And so we finally wore her down, convinced her to use actual salted butter, and were able to replicate the most delicious frosting I've ever tasted.
Toby's family also figured out a gluten-free version that works quite well.
And literally, this is still our go-to birthday cake for my family. My partner now of 10 years also always wants it for his birthday. I will pass this recipe on to any young people in my life who want to experience this cake, because it really is just the ideal cake to me and to my family.
Toby, I'm glad to hear you're willing to share the recipe. Not everyone is. There's this furniture store my parents sometimes go to, and they're friendly. They say hi to familiar employees. Recently, my dad was walking out of the store and someone called out to him,
"Hey, Rob." And I turn around and it's this particular individual who I had no idea even knew my name. And he says,
"Would you give me the cake recipe?"
And I said, "Well, sure." I said, "Why? What's up?" He said, "Well, I know the previous, the guy who took over the store, and I've been asking him for the recipe, and he won't give it to me. I've been asking him for years, and he won't give it to me. He doesn't even own the store anymore."
And he still won't give
He won't give it to him.
So my dad went home and sent it to him in an email. The next day, he got an email back. It had a picture of a cake and a note saying, "I feel like I won the lottery." So that's the chocolate cake. If you make it, I hope you share it. It's a lot of cake for just one person. But you also have to share the recipe with whoever asks for it. The responsibility is on you, because the recipe is yours now, too.
You can find the recipe for the dark chocolate cake and the cream cheese icing that goes with it on our website, eartheats.org. This story was produced by Alex Chambers.
I think for me, what I didn't expect was actually how many different perspectives there were and how differently people look at art.
The pandemic has changed the way many of us experience education, dining, socializing, and culture more broadly, including the visual arts. Here at Indiana University, in the Sidney and Lois Eskenazi Museum of Art, Laura Shepper had to find new ways to engage the public with the museum's collection.
I'm Laura Shepper. My pronouns are she and her. I serve as the Public Experiences Manager at the Eskenazi Museum of Art, located on the Indiana University Bloomington campus.
Her role is to design experiences that facilitate connection between the artworks and the people visiting the museum. Without visitors in the physical space of the museum, Laura faced a challenging situation. She found inspiration in an informal Zoom call between her family and another family, friends of hers, where they cooked together for a socially distanced culinary experience. It was so much fun that she thought it might make for an engaging experience with the museum. She enlisted the support of a local foodie and social media influencer, Kalie Dance.
Hi, my name is Kalie Dance. I am a social media specialist at Indiana University, and I'm also a food influencer in the Bloomington community.
Together, they crafted a series of art and food pairings for monthly Zoom sessions throughout the semester. For each session, they invited someone from the food world to identify an object from the museum's collection, something they felt drawn to from a number of options that Laura shared with them digitally. Next, they would think of a food pairing for the object and would join the food and art pairing Zoom session for a discussion. Participants could see the artwork ahead of time and consider their own food pairings, and possibly even prepare them to enjoy during the session. Laura's expertise is in guiding people towards engaging with art.
The way it works is that we start with what we call a visual menu, and that menu is an artwork. Typically, in most episodes, we'll look at a single artwork together, and then I facilitate a conversation So with that, we're asking people to look closely at the artwork, and we start by asking, what do you see? And we ask people to describe with as much vivid detail as they can what we're looking at together. So at that point, we're not talking about memories or other things. We're just strictly noticing the details of what we can see. And it's with any of these conversations, the more people who are contributing, the more perspectives, we each notice different things. Kalie's eye might be drawn to something different than my eye is drawn to. And the more people who are contributing, we're going to pick out different details, and that's going to lead us to a richer conversation and more ideas in terms of food pairing. After we talk about what we see, the next question that I typically ask is, based on your own life experience, based on what we're seeing, what you can see in this image here, what kind of thoughts come to mind? What are you thinking? Once we talk about some of the thoughts and what we're thinking when we're looking at the image, then we get into a question of, okay, based on life experience, based on the thoughts that have surfaced for everybody, what, if anything, are you wondering? What kind of questions come to mind? And for there, then that's a natural lead into what kinds of food or beverage might pair with this particular artwork based on, all these ideas that emerged and people's curiosities, and, you start wondering, one thing leads to another. There's usually by then a vibe or a sense of feelings or different things that might be thoughts and so forth. And then we'll listen to ideas from the community, from participants who are at the table, and then we'll take turns, Kalie and myself and a featured guest, revealing specifically what did each of us choose to pair with this particular artwork.
One of the things that appealed to me about the series is that there are no wrong answers when it comes to pairing food with art.
I hope that everybody knows there's no right answers. I'm not sure if that's true. Honestly, I really hope that, and I try hard to communicate that. It would be easy to think, oh, I don't know, I'm not a chef. I don't know how to fancily do a food for an artwork, or, or maybe you have to replicate the artwork and, paint it, or, I can imagine all kinds of, I hope that people realize that there's no wrong answer, and the beauty of it is just expressing and finding a way to connect with it in your own life. And when I reached out recently to a curator, she said, yes, but it's okay to use it, but there's no connection to food. I was like, oh, that doesn't have to be, we're going to add the connection to food.
I think for me, what I didn't expect was actually how many different perspectives there were and how differently people look at art. The individuality aspect of it is so cool because people do have different life experiences. Even if there are common denominators between two people, no two people are the exact same. So for me, when I'm sitting here listening to other people share their stories, share their experiences, and share their thoughts on these pieces, it's really cool because in a way, I'm getting to know, this single person. And for me, it's been really important to amplify my connection with other people because, again, we are in a pandemic. I can't go see everybody all the time. And one thing that I truly miss is going out and getting dinner or brunch with my friends. So by doing this series, that's essentially what I'm doing. Everybody who logs on, whether it's 20 people or 40 people, they're all my friends at that point. We're getting to know each other. We're connecting over Zoom. And it's, again, just a reminder that basic human connection is just something that's so important. And I really feel like today we're taking advantage of all that we can in order to keep that connection.
I think it's connected on a level beyond what I expected in terms of the feedback and the messages that I get, that people are just really appreciating right now the opportunity to do that.
Food can serve as a familiar entry point for people who may not be used to talking about art.
A lot of people don't have experience with art, and I was actually one of those people before Laura approached me. Of course, I've been to museums and I've seen art before, but I just kind of had a blind eye to it. I would see these art pieces and I would be like, wow, that's really pretty. But what am I supposed to be feeling? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be thinking? And I had no idea that it was more of this personal connection. It's more of, well, what do you see? What do you think? That kind of opened up my eyes to the art world. Now I walk into museums and I'm like, oh, let's stop. I really want to stare at the details of this. And I always start asking questions with my friends now. I'm like, what do you think the artist was thinking when they painted this color instead of something else? And it's so cool because it's just like I have this new lens now. And again, it is thanks to you. So I'm very thankful that you were introduced to me.
Food is universal. We all have experiences with food. It can feel like a safe entry point or something familiar. It may be an easy way to start talking about it. I think a great example would be one of the earlier artworks we looked at with executive chef David Talent. It's a painting of a forest stream. And as he talked about that and described what he saw, he had memories of walking across campus in the fall, And for me, I was thinking picnics and other things, but for him, thinking through the fall and the crunchiness of the leaves. And he talked about, for him, there was this seasonality to butternut squash, and the local farmers asking him, David, are you ready to start cooking with it? And they've got the squash, and it's coming out earlier than he's ready, for he's not ready for the winter and that change. And he said, not until the leaves are down, I think it is, that would he start to buy these and use those. So he's bringing, a really interesting personal connection just by looking at that image and starting to describe the leaves on the ground and what he's seeing and the trees and the changes seasons.
I asked if they could think of any examples of what a guest chef chose as their pairing.
Our featured guest was Candace Boyd Wiley of Food Love Talk. She's based in Indianapolis. The artwork she selected was titled A Study for Support. There's actually a mural in Cleveland that this artist had made. So the painting that we have is a watercolor painting where the artist was preparing to make the mural. It is by the artist Darius Stewart. It is a watercolor on a white piece of paper. Most of the painting is in the left half of the image. It's vertically oriented. You can see a woman with slightly darker skin and dark hair, and she is looking downward and gazing downward at a young boy of dark skin. He's got very short hair. He's only visible, I would say, from the neck up. Yeah. Does that sound right? Mm-hmm. They are reaching toward each other. Their eyes are connected. Lovely work. So I think when we started to look at it together and describe, people were starting to see that connection between the adult female and the child. And we're thinking about the feelings of connection and safety and belonging and uplifting. We wondered what was on their minds, what conversation was happening, what was she saying to him. And then Candace paired it with several foods, actually more than one. It was a beautiful pairing that evoked those feelings of connection. I think she had her braised collard greens. I should have looked at my notes before going in.
She had cornbread, too.
She had cornbread, yes, and she had a cabbage with Johnny cakes. It was fantastic. There's several recipes I want to go back and look at again.
I asked Kalie what she had paired with the artwork.
I ended up pairing it with this Southern-style country potato chowder, which is something that my mom used to make for me every time I was sick. And it just reminded me, like, the mix between the art and the cold weather outside. I wanted to go home so bad. So I made this chowder kind of just in her name, essentially. And for each episode, I do take photos of all the food that I had. So the image that I had posted was the bowl of soup with a little Polaroid of me and my mom when I was younger, almost kind of a little younger than the boy in the art piece. But I also had a little handwritten note of the most recent card that she had sent me. So it was very sentimental. But yes, I did have a pairing.
Sometimes the featured guests prepared their food pairing during the session. Mori Willhite of Katsumi's Teaching Kitchen had selected an ornate ceramic piece of stacked circular boxes as her art object. Then she taught a cooking lesson.
She had made a bento box. She taught us how to make sushi, actually, on the episode. Such a cool experience. I wrote down her rice recipe almost immediately. I am so excited and so determined to make my own sushi roll one day.
We'll be talking with Mori Willhite later in the episode. Even though meeting as a group for an art and food pairing workshop may still remain out of reach, the museum is now open to visitors, and you might have a chance to see some of the artwork in person.
I do visit the art museum to see the artworks in real life, and I get surprised every time. So one of the artworks that we had seen, it was so much smaller than what I had expected. It was really like this big.
The vase, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's so tiny, but when I was looking at it, I imagined it to be this giant thing. And so when I went to the museum, it was like a little scavenger hunt. I got to see some really cool art along the way while I was trying to find this art piece.
That's a great point. I think seeing that in person, I felt the same way as you. It was smaller than I expected on that particular it's a Japanese vase. I remember, so you paired it with mochi, and I thought that was brilliant. Like, not only the colors in it and the flavors inside, but also even just that roundness and the size. Like, I thought, brilliant.
I had no idea. I didn't realize it was that small. So when I saw it afterwards, I was like, oh, I hit that on the head. Like, I was like, I'm
you
pretty
did
good at it.
Yes, and then that one we think it may have been, it could be used for as a vase in a Japanese tea ceremony. So I went over to Cup and Kettle and got a tea to go with it. I believe it was an orange blossom tea based on some of the coloring in it. And then Eric Shedler from Muddy Fork Bakery paired it with a croissant. With all this particular technique was where the clay different types of clay are layered together in a very intricate way. And so he likened it to the way a croissant is layered with the layers of dough. There's a lot of similarities there. And I thought, again, just 3 interesting directions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's getting into like the structure of how something's made.
Right.
And Dave Talent was getting into what are the associations of the season. And that is really interesting. And Mori was talking about how she might use this or how someone in her family might use this object. So that is a lot of really interesting connections. Maybe you can't visit the drawing in person, but maybe you could go looking for that mural.
Sure.
You know, maybe that's something you'll get to experience in person and you would know to look for it and you might get to actually see it.
Sure, and then you might have other new connections to it, having been in that conversation together with everybody in the memories. It might mean something different than if you had not had that conversation and walked by on the street.
Well, thank you both so much, guys. I had you here for a little longer than expected. So.
Oh, no, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking and an opportunity to have this conversation today.
Today our guests were Laura Shepper and Kalie Dance with the Sidney and Lois Eskenazi Museum of Art at Indiana University. Find more about their work at eartheats.org. I'm Kate Young, and you're listening to Earth Eats. Stay tuned for a conversation and recipe with Mori Willhite of Katsumi's Teaching Kitchen. Kate Young here. You're listening to Earth Eats. One of the featured guests for the Eskenazi Museum's food and art pairings was Mori Willhite.
My name is Mori Willhite. I am the owner-operator of Katsumi's Teaching Kitchen.
Mori has been running the Teaching Kitchen for about 6 years, but recently moved her business into a storefront on Main Street in downtown Beech Grove on the outskirts of Indianapolis. Mori describes herself as a snob when it comes to Japanese food. She says she gets that from her mother.
Not only my mom's a snob because my grandparents were. One of the earliest memories I have of cooking is when I was like 5 or 6 in Japan, and I was helping my Japanese grandmother cook. And so whenever I get sad, lonely, or depressed, as I got older, I always start cooking Japanese food, and it just makes me feel happier.
Do you remember what she was making?
She was busy making whatever dinner it was, but she would have me wear the oversized Japanese apron and cut up something very badly, and then made sure everyone knew, oh, Mori helped today. She cut the green onions, stuff like that. So it's just food for, I think, not only me, but everybody. If you have good memories with your family through cooking, all that stuff in the kitchen, that's what it represents most to me. So I was born in 1963. And we were in Japan for a little bit in the late 60s, and back then sushi was only eaten for special occasions, not as frequently as it does now. So for me, sushi is like, something could happen, but now it's everywhere. And then plus my dad, he's American Samoan, so he's a Polynesian too. So I've been eating Japanese style food and raw fish since, I can remember. When we moved back to the States, Dad was in the Marine Corps, and Mom, we were in San Diego. You couldn't take the Japanese out of the girl. So Mom started cooking real Japanese food. And her parents, my grandparents, were sending in monthly Japanese rice and soy sauce and seaweed because there's nothing adequate in San Diego. So we ate like that. I learned quickly that just because it says Japanese restaurant, it doesn't mean you're going to get what you got at home. And so that's why my sister and I, we didn't formally study cooking, of course, but our taste buds were very refined. And as we grew up as you grow up, and eventually you have to leave home, that's when I started really learning how to make Japanese food, because unless I learned how to make rice, I couldn't wait till Thanksgiving or Christmas when I came back. I mean, it's just no way I was going to give it up. When I went to college, of course, I made friends with Japanese students, and we did cookouts there, and I would pick up something here and there. What's even funnier is I was in the Army, and as soon as I settled somewhere, I had my mom send for my rice cooker. She sent it to me. I had my rice cooker with me in the barracks, and I make Japanese food because I can't live without it. And you get bored, so you start expanding your menu. And
she describes herself as more of a teacher than a chef. She has a background as a Japanese language instructor, but she's found that sharing food is a fun way to connect with others around Japanese culture.
Everyone's happy around food. Everyone's even happy around good food.
And running her own cooking school allowed her the flexibility she needed when she was caring for her elderly mother and her child with special needs. She started with what she knew from her family and then dove into researching Japanese cuisine to fill in the gaps.
Because people when they ask you questions, you better know the answer type thing. So, a lot of it, thank God my mom was the food snob, because a lot of the stuff, especially here in the U.S., especially here in Indiana, she would tell me how she would get some of her things. So one time we were having sushi at my mom's house, and then, that tin container I have to put the seaweed in. So I picked up my mom's, I opened it, and the seaweed looked molded to me. And my mom's old, so I thought, oh my gosh, she's keeping the molded stuff. I go, Mom, you should throw this out. It's probably bad. And she goes, no, you don't understand. And finally, she confessed, back to traditional Chinese medicine. When you ingest gold, it's good for your joints. So my mom, I knew she had gold-dusted green tea and gold-dusted salt. My mom had gold-dusted seaweed. What the? Mom, what is this? Well, she didn't want to share because it's gold. God forbid she shared it with her firstborn or something. She shared it with her grandson. She wouldn't share. I go, Mom, I don't have to eat this, but, okay, thanks for telling me. Like, it's just it's hilarious in retrospect, but she was hiding her gold stuff. Most people invested, but my mom's eating the stuff, so it was like, whatever.
Her mom's insistence on high-end Japanese ingredients did come in handy when Mori started her teaching kitchen. She knew where to get all the supplies. In her classes, Mori takes the time to talk about specific ingredients and where to find them locally. And she goes over the different grades of rice and why it's worth paying a bit more for the good stuff without going overboard, as her mom sometimes did. Mori tells the story of her mom once paying $75 for a bag of the new crop of her favorite rice.
You couldn't wait a week, Mother, that sort of thing, because she just misses home. I understand. And I go, next time you buy something like that, don't tell me. I don't want to know.
Mori's food and art pairing with the Eskenazi Museum of Art took place on a Saturday afternoon in January. The artwork she chose was a round, stacked porcelain lunchbox, lavishly decorated with intricate patterns in shades of orange and red and blue. Laura Shepper and Kalie Dance led the discussion of the artwork and guided participants to spend time looking at photos of the piece and to share thoughts about associations they made. Mori talked about her first impressions of the piece.
What I like about this 5-tier bento, it makes you anxious what the food's going to be. I mean, if the container is going to be this pretty, what is the food going to be like?
Other participants talked about what the piece brought up for them, questions they had, and they speculated on whether the piece was decorative or something that was actually used for food. Laura shared information about the history of the piece, where it came from, and the type of porcelain that was used. Mori talked about the symbolism of the turtle and the crane figures she noticed on the top of the domed lid of the box, and she wondered if it might have been intended as a wedding gift.
Symbolically in Japan, when you go to a Japanese wedding or traditional, they have the crane as a present because cranes are monogamous. They mate with the same partner for life. And also there's a turtle on the bottom. Turtles represent 10,000 years of continuation or longevity. So that's why I brought up the wedding, and hopefully, you have a very stable, monogamous relationship, 10,000 years or forever. So that's why I brought that.
Then Laura shared some background information on bento.
A bento itself
is a takeout or a home-packed meal of Japanese origin, though it's also in use in other countries as well. So a bento box is a box or a container for that meal. They can range from a mass-produced disposable container to lacquerware. So in this case, we're looking at porcelain. When Kalie asked the wise question about when might we actually use this, and I think maybe for a very elegant occasion. Just a bit more on bento for context. In Japan, bento are readily available as takeout in a lot of different places, like a convenience store, a bento shop, a train station, or a store. But it's not just for takeout meals. Japanese homemakers and others with the time and energy to carefully prepare lunchboxes for their spouse or their kids or even themselves.
The discussion moved to what foods people had paired with the art object. Laura talked about a sesame ginger tofu dish. Kalie mentioned some Japanese sodas she found at B-Town International Market. And Mori said that she had chosen sushi.
The sushi is colorful. The vibrant colors would set off the vibrancy of the food as well.
After the food pairing discussion, Mori led the participants through instructions for making a California roll. She talked about the importance of rice in sushi making. Mori makes a point in her sushi instruction of breaking down the origins of the word sushi.
And that's where the word sushi comes from. Su is vinegar and meshi is rice. So it's supposed to be about the vinegared rice.
This was a revelation to me. I always thought that sushi was all about the raw fish. But it made sense to me. I've enjoyed plenty of sushi rolls with no seafood at all, with avocado, cucumber, or even asparagus in the center of that cylinder of sticky white rice cloaked in a sheet of shiny nori. My enjoyment of sushi has so often been about the elegant marriage of all of the flavors and textures, dipping each piece in soy sauce, topping it with a dab of wasabi and a sliver of pickled ginger. I always feel so awake and alive after eating sushi. And the few times I have not enjoyed sushi, I will say, it was the rice that ruined it. If you've ever been fooled into thinking a tray of supermarket sushi might be a good idea, you know how disappointing it is to bite into that cold and crumbly rice. So it makes sense to me that Mori starts her instruction with rice. It's at the heart of making good sushi. Mori recommends that her students take photos of the rice bags and other ingredient packaging in her class as a reference for when they go to the international market. They'll know what they're looking for.
Grade, all of this, the premium, short grade, super premium, it's all about the rice for sushi. The high quality rice will make a difference as far as, there is actually taste at this level. When you chew the rice, the more you chew, there's a sweetness to it. But more important, aside from the taste, is that stickiness. You want your sushi rice to be just sticky enough so when you mold it, it will hold its shape.
Mori walked the participants through an abbreviated set of instructions and demonstrated the assembly of the California roll. Then she placed her cut sushi circles within the context of a bento box meal that she had put together before the session. It was a lovely display of edible art. When I had the chance, weeks after the food and art pairing event, to taste sushi that Mori had made, after hearing about her careful selection and preparation of the rice, I was convinced. Good rice makes all the difference. Visiting with Mori in her Beech Grove teaching kitchen, I was struck by her generosity. She readily reveals all of her secrets to making the perfect sushi rice or how to build umami flavors for a simple miso soup.
Get that umami flavor out, and then I'll strain it in a second.
After building a broth base called dashi by slow simmering water, dried shiitake mushrooms, dried anchovies, and kombu, which is a type of seaweed, Mori is now adding the bonito flakes. They're made from dried smoked fish that's been shaved into very thin flakes.
Straining it all out because you just want the good juices and everything.
So the bonito flakes weren't in there very long.
They're very thin, so. You see that apple juice coloring? That's the dashi. This is the miso paste I use. You want to make sure that the miso paste dissolves properly. In the ladle, I put some miso paste, and I'm using my chopstick to break it up, dissolve it better. You don't miss any chunks.
So you added some of the broth to
Correct. It'll help it to dissolve quicker and better. I'm just adding, as I add some of the miso paste already goes into, this will just make it more.
Each of these ingredients, the miso, kombu, shiitake, bonito flakes, anchovy, they're all working together to build that fifth taste we refer to as umami.
Yeah.
It's a deep and complex savory flavor.
The thing with the miso paste, since they have some microorganisms in there, live ones, to help with your lower gut, you don't want to have the water too hot because it'll kill them. I have to turn it down some more.
So you always add that at the end, right before you serve it?
Yes. This is the easy part. The broth is what takes the most time if you're doing it from scratch. Here's some tofus I cut up. The green onions, I usually wait to about when I serve it because, they wilt so quickly and stuff. So in our family, we put a little bit of sake in there to enhance the flavor. So dry is better. I'm just going to eyeball it just a little, like a teaspoon or so. Right towards the end. Cold days like this, miso soup is best.
While I was there, Mori also demonstrated how to make spring rolls, California sushi rolls, as she had done in the art pairing session, and she even showed me how she bakes a cake in her rice cooker.
Everyone's like, I can't believe we flipped that out of the rice cooker, but it's one of those hacks that just turns out. I try to promote, a lot of American goes, I don't want to just get one appliance to do one thing. Oh no, you can make cake, you can make mac and cheese. I try to introduce other stuff, so it adds a good anti-mori. Most of my friends, their children go to college, so I buy them a proper rice cooker and I give them a bag of rice. If that's not love, I don't know what is. So they spend the time with me, make their rice, make all these Japanese dishes, so they'll call me and tell me you're hungry. I sent you to college with a bag of rice, and you know how to make stuff, so.
With the COVID-19 pandemic hitting the U.S. just as Katsumi's teaching kitchen had moved to its new location, Mori had to make some adjustments. She started teaching classes over Zoom and even built her own DIY overhead camera mount out of PVC pipe.
And all the classes have been easy. Once you buy, you get the recipe and the shopping list. Okay. And I tell you, call me if you can't find it. Okay. We'll try to get something equal.
I tried out one of the Zoom classes with a few friends. We made a Japanese version of pork and cabbage pot stickers. It was fun to connect and to make food together from the comfort of our own kitchens. And even though she wasn't in the room with us, Mori made sure we understood each step, including the tricky steaming and frying technique at the end. The pot stickers were fantastic. You can see photos, find the miso soup recipe, and learn more about Katsumi's teaching kitchen at eartheats.org. That's it for our show this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. The Earth Eats team includes Eobon Binder, Alex Chambers, Toby Foster, Luann Johnson, Leo Pies, Samantha Shimenauer, Peyton Whaley, and we partner with Harvest Public Media. Special thanks this week to Rob Chambers, Toby Davis, Kalie Dance, Laura Shepper, and Mori Willhite. Earth Eats is produced and edited by me, Kate Young. Our theme music is composed by Aaron Toby and performed by Aaron and Matt Toby. Additional music on the show comes to us from Universal Production Music. Our executive producer is Eric Bolstridge.